here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the artist and photographer Sharon Smith, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about life, love, poetry and all that other groovy stuff. Recently, 2025 has published a book titled Camera Girl, which is a 144-page book of photographs she took in the late 70s and 80s in the New York club scene, which never been seen before but has just been published. I will put a link to the book in the notes below, so you'll be able to click on it and buy a copy because it's beautifully done and worth checking out. But anyway, this is the interview with Sharon. So after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get down to the exciting subject that was the early formative years. Sharon, it's over to you.
I'm so much older than you. I grew up in Dallas, Texas. I listened to the radio. You know, it was in the 50s. I'm 73 now. So I listened to the radio. My first concert was the Beatles in 1964 in Dallas. Just to give you a kind of context of what that was like, I was 13. And I was the chaperone for my sister, who was 10, and her cousin. And our parents dropped us off there, and we went to see the Beatles. Can you imagine now a 13-year-old chaperoning two 10-year-olds?
Yes.
You know, we went to see the Beatles. We threw jelly beans. We screamed. You know, and then afterwards we had a meeting point, and we walked there, we met my parents, and we went home. But that's like a totally different context. And, you know, then I was into James Brown and Motown and, you know, all the 60s people. I went to the Texas Pop Festival. You know, I saw Janis Joplin and Cream and, you know, Earth, Wind and Fire and, you know, I mean, and then in college, I was kind of a deadhead, and I did that for a while. And, you know, I was sort of a creature of what was available to me.
Yes, well, but it was a very good time.
It was really, the music was great. You know, Bob Dylan. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the Bob Dylan movie that's out.
I haven't seen it yet. It's on my radar to go and catch it. Is it good?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, it doesn't go deeply into his character, but the actor who plays Bob Dylan is terrific at singing Bob Dylan. And it really like just brought me back to that. You know, that was the soundtrack for me.
Yes.
For a certain part of my life. It was so meaningful, and it brought tears to my eyes. I was so moved by it. But yes. I think I don't know how it was for you, but for me, music was always a super important part of my life. And in the beginning, it was just listening to the radio, and I had a transistor radio, and late at night I would put my little earphones in, and I would like go, oh, Chicago. I got a Chicago station. I got a Nashville station. Oh man, there's New York. You know, and it was all very clandestine. You know, like yes. the radio was under the pillow, and I remember the smell of that transistor radio. You know, it was like 1962, 1961, 62, something like that, and music was just my way of expanding, you know, like reaching into a bigger world. Yes. And it was always like that. And
so, but your parents must have been incredible. So your parents must have been quite a liberal a liberal couple to say, look, here's my daughters who are barely teenagers. Well, one is and the
They
others
want,
aren't. They must have been
they
quite
want to go see
relaxed
the
about it
Beatles.
because having done a lot of these
No,
interviews, especially in America, quite a few teenagers run away at the age of 15, never to see their parents again, whereas your parents
yeah.
seem quite nice.
Well, they had their moments, you know. I think that they just realized that. Well, first of all, my best friend spent the night for 3 nights to get the tickets. You know, the tickets were $6, something like that.
Yes.
And and I think my parents just thought, all right, this is so important to them. Let's just go with it. You know,
Yes. Well, absolutely. That's fantastic.
they weren't happy. I don't think they were really happy about it, but you know, they they went along.
No, they went along. They had no smartphones to say, to keep you safe. So when
Where
you
are
got
you?
to, yeah, I know. So can I? Yes, no sort of waving of cameras at the stage. So when you got to sort of that age of 16, 17, that would have been the summer of love, 67,
Yeah,
68. So what was your?
yeah,
Because you would have been the perfect age. You would have been there in that absolute.
yeah. It was like I loved the Jefferson Airplane, and I loved Janis Joplin, and I loved all of those people. Joni Mitchell. I loved I loved everybody.
Yes,
That
and
it was like it was just Bob Dylan. I loved it. It was everything to me.
yes, absolutely. I sort of can relate to that obsession with music. But as the 60s then progressed, then we had that kind of period, the summer of love, great optimism. And then did you stay in Dallas during all that time, or had you relocated at any point in the 60s?
Well, I went to college in Nashville, Tennessee, and I moved from Dallas in 1969 to go to Nashville. And the Nashville thing, it was a country music scene. It was
Yes.
it was different. And so it wasn't really my scene. I was definitely a hippie chick, and you know, I didn't really love country music until Bob Dylan was on the Johnny Cash show. And when Bob Dylan kind of embraced some aspect of country music, I started appreciating country music. But it was still not my thing. I mean, that was when I
Yes.
got introduced to the Grateful Dead, and that was more what I started to get into,
And how did you cope
that
then?
kind of
You would
stuff.
have been that perfect age that these, music meant so much, and that perfect age of being obsessed with it. And but then, when Brian Jones died, then Hendrix, Morrison, Joplin all died. You had Charles Manson. How did you feel like, oh, this party's gone from slightly brilliant to a bit of a downer? How did you navigate that
Oh,
emotionally?
definitely. Well, uh, I think it was those events were devastating, uh, but I think the aspect the aspect of music that had changed people's consciousness, that was still going on. And I mean, hard drugs were they took their toll on people in the music business, and that was really it was devastating. uh but there was still music. It was still it was
Yes,
still it was still doing what it was doing.
yes, but it was quite a
It just
different
kind of
scene.
shifted.
It had, yes, quite.
It didn't affect me personally because I was living in the southern part of the United States, and I wasn't in California, I wasn't in New York City, I wasn't in Chicago. I was in
Yes,
Nashville, Tennessee. It was
Nashville.
very different.
So why did you, who sounded quite tuned in, turned on, and dropping out? How did you find yourself going south to Nashville and not sort of like one of the other places that you might have thought, oh,
Well, I wanted to go elsewhere. I wanted to go to California. Actually, I wanted to go to Berkeley to college. My parents were really afraid that I was going to turn into a hippie. And they kind of put the kibosh on that. They did not want me to go there. And I had gotten a scholarship to Vanderbilt University in Nashville. And so I ended up going there. And actually, to their chagrin, I probably became more of a hippie chick in Nashville than I would have in Berkeley. Because in Berkeley, I would have been not really far out, but in Nashville, I could easily be kind of far out.
Yes, I could imagine it was quite easy.
And I loved all the people in Nashville who were far out, because it took a lot more guts in a way to be far out there than in a place where, everybody was, I'm using this term, like that's what we always used to say, far out.
Well, I know, man. That was very cool. You mentioned the Grateful Dead and probably people like Neil Young, James Taylor, Joni Mitchell. Yeah. What about that other side of like the glam, the David Bowie, Roxy music, prog rock with Yes and Genesis, or Led Zeppelin?
Well, I got into them in the mid 70s, I would say.
Right.
That was a little later for me, because a lot of that kind of music, that you said that was part of your kind of cultural awakening, was that kind of music. A lot of that kind of music was very in the States anyway, more urban, more fashionable, more. It was different. It was just it wasn't really happening in Nashville.
No,
I had to get out of there to hear that kind of music.
Yes,
or not just to hear it, but to really get into it.
I would imagine. Yes. Did at that stage, did you also get into various writers? Most people talk about Jack Kerouac or Allen Ginsberg, Tom Wolfe, Hunter S. Thompson. Were you also and having spiritual moments with Carlos Castaneda and sort of taking hallucinogenic drugs and stuff? Did you also embrace that kind of alternative world?
Oh, definitely. I was definitely doing that. Carlos Castaneda was a hero. Ram Dass was a hero. I was a philosophy major in college. So because I didn't, I wanted to just read philosophy and, take drugs and, be just understand the universe.
Be one with it all.
Yeah.
Yes.
I still want to do that.
Who doesn't?
That's still, yeah. But I've made a life of it. What I do now, it's interesting. Very few of these interviews that I've done and almost nobody has asked me well, what do you do now? Are you still taking Polaroids? Are you still a photographer? Or are you doing something different? Nothing. So I'm going to take this opportunity to tell you that I teach Tai Chi and meditation.
Nice.
And that's what I've been doing for the past 20 years. And that comes directly out of these musical experiences and those drug experiences, where I felt with the music and the drugs, I'm not advocating drugs here, but this was my experience, way back there. I would get this message: every cell in your body is alive. Every cell in your body is alive. And that's what I'm into now. I teach people to tune into themselves in that way.
Yes.
And it's very meaningful to do that.
Had you started doing brown rice diets and raw food diets and cleansing diets and all that? Was that because we had the Cranks cookbook in the UK during the 70s. Oh, and the Tassajara bread book and various self-sufficiency things.
The Tassajara bread book. Yeah.
Classic. Yeah. We all had one, didn't we? Yes, it was kind of important because it was a real movement out of the 60s. The 60s dream was a bit like, it didn't happen, but we'll go into the countryside and we'll start growing vegetables.
Yeah. And I did that. I was in the whole Back to the Land movement. after college, I lived on what I would call an unintentional community in Virginia.
Right.
And we raised all our own food, and it was really something that came out of the 60s. Also, the other thing that I've been doing the past few years is making little movies. And I made a movie of that experience based on a reunion of people who attended a Thanksgiving dinner in 1973. It's called Ripple, from the Grateful Dead song, Ripple.
Beautiful. Yes.
And if you're at all interested in it, I'll send you a link to it. It's just a short 15-minute thing where people, talk about what it was like to live at that time. And I made it 20 years ago. So just to let you know, it's 20 years old, little movie.
But people can, because there was a lot of communities started in this country. I know there was, seen various documentaries in America and various philosophers. I think there was one called, is it The Nature Boys, which was quite an interesting one that, and people were into this other character, a writer called, is it something Ayn Rand, who was also this sort of...
Ayn Rand. Well, she became like a kind of a right-wing figure. She was a right-wing figure, and a lot of right-wing kind of people take her on as a kind of a guru.
Yes.
For certain things. But the people that I was involved with, they were more interested in like Bucky Fuller. You know who he was?
Oh, yes, Buckminster Fuller. Yes, I mean, Jones, yes.
The geodesic Jones. And also Scott and Helen Nearing, who lived in Vermont, and they were completely self-sufficient. They raised all their own food, and they were just completely self-sufficient. So those were the kind of people that were considered, role models.
Yes.
For that crowd of people that I was involved with in the mid 70s.
And also a lot of personal development as well during that period as well, with people doing a lot of workshops and discovering different ways of being and releasing their inner demons.
Definitely.
It was all primal scream, wasn't it, really, at that stage? There
was a lot of that.
It was a lot of that. So when did you move out of Nashville? Was that in the sort of late 70s then?
I moved out of Nashville in 72. And I moved to Virginia, and I was there until 75. I traveled for about a year, and then I moved to Virginia in 73. And then I started studying photography in Washington, D.C. Towards the end of my time in Virginia, and I moved to New York State to study photography in 76, January of 76.
God,
and then I moved to New York City in February of 78.
78. So at that stage, New York was quite a grim place from what I've found out about. It's not looking terribly good, is it? And optimistic. Was that quite a hard from your sort of heart, your idyllic communities and living on the land to a place that's almost bankrupt and is it's quite derelict. How did you navigate that kind of emotional transition?
Well, it was a very tough time for me. It was even though I had gone to photos, I was in survival mode, I was just trying to survive. And New York was kind of a tough place. And I took it on as a kind of a challenge, I guess. And I was young. I was 27 when I moved to New York, 26 maybe. Yes. I turned 27 in 78. So I was 26, 27, and I was like a lot of young people at that time, and now as well, who moved to this city with a lot of dreams and no money and no way to make money, no way to make a living. And, I had gone to photo school, but it was an art community. And it was all about making art. It wasn't about making a living. And I had discovered Polaroid photography there.
Mm.
And I felt such a connection to that medium. And I loved it. And I just loved it. But I didn't really know how to make a living. And the idea of making a living shooting Polaroid pictures, forget it. I didn't know how I could do that. That was like a crazy idea. And so it was, for a few years, it was kind of a tough time.
Yes.
I had some odd jobs, and fortunately for me, I started studying Tai Chi, which kind of saved me in the long run, because it gave me a practice to kind of keep myself together. I did some graphic design work for my Tai Chi teacher, helping him do books and things like that. What else did I do?
Did you gravitate? I was going to say, did you gravitate towards a few other artists or community type people? Obviously, there's the famous one, isn't there, Andy Warhol? But there was also, I suppose, was Keith Haring on the scene, Basquiat, at that stage, or
they were all around, but I didn't know them.
No,
I didn't.
And did you sort of go to things? I mean, punk had started at this stage as well. Were you tempted with CBGBs or Max's Kansas City at this point?
A little bit, but it was a little too harsh for me. Truthfully, it was a little. I was a little sensitive at the time, I guess. I felt very vulnerable and sensitive. And I just felt like I couldn't get my own life together. And I just, it just took me a while. And once I got this job at the Copacabana shooting the prom kids who went out for high school prom season. And after that, I realized that I could shoot Polaroids in clubs. That gave me a lot of confidence. And that's when I really started going out. So it took me a few years to get there.
Yes. Yeah. And the camera. Did you sort of, have you analysed the relationship of you and the camera and the sort of the mirror or the mask, or not the mirror, the kind of the ability to sort of not hide behind it, but gave you that role? Or
well, it gave me a role. It gave me something, a reason to be there, I still do well when I have a reason to be in a social situation, and that's my personality. I don't know what I can say about it, but having a role like that in that scene was great for me because I could talk to people. I was a camera girl. I had a place there. I wasn't really confident enough to just go out and meet people, but having a role like that helped me.
Yeah, well, I could imagine, because I've never been to I have probably been to a nightclub. I wasn't a nightclub person because I felt far too self-conscious and uptight and insecure to go to those sort of places. I was happier at a gig. So being at what you were doing would have totally terrified me.
That's funny.
All these beautiful people dressed up, and they're all very flamboyant, and they look so confident. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that's really the opposite to how I feel. So I might leave the party quick. But you obviously were able to do your thing. This is very impressive.
I was. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, a lot of people think of it as a very glamorous job, and there were moments where it was kind of glamorous, but I just keep telling people it was a job, I was supporting myself doing this. So I wasn't just going out to have a drink or to smoke a joint or to dance. I was going out because that was my job.
Yes.
To walk around and ask people, would you like a photograph? And I loved it.
Yes, absolutely. So you took the photograph, but you didn't give it to them. That's the amazing thing. Did you? So there'd been a Polaroid.
No, I did both. I mean, I sold photographs. Did you read the interview in the book?
I have read bits of it, but just explain what the process was.
Well, I was the camera girl. That meant I walked around. I asked people if they would like a Polaroid picture. Sometimes they would say yes. Sometimes they would say no. When they would say yes, I would take a photo. Picture would come out. They would pay me for it. I would put it in a little frame or a glassine. In the book, there's a reproduction of the glassine in the interview at the end. Do you have the book there?
Yes, I've got the PDF. Yes.
Oh, you got the PDF from Madison?
Yes.
Sent it to you? So you can see at the end, there's a little glassine that says photographed by Sharon Smith, and I would put that in there. Or sometimes I would order these frames, like for New Year's Eve or something, I would put it in something else and they would pay me. However, I was trained as a photographer. I knew the history of photography. I'd seen Lisette Model's photographs of people in nightclubs in Paris. And, I'd seen August Sander's portrait of, German citizens. I had seen Diana, I loved portraiture. And I just thought, oh, this is a great opportunity to document this particular cultural moment. So if I saw someone who was, I thought, either very exemplary of the cultural moment or stood out in some way, like looked really, like somehow exemplified it in a way that was like up here rather than down here.
Yes.
Like somebody who really expressed it, I would ask them if I could take a picture for my personal collection. And they almost always said yes.
That's
and
amazing.
sometimes those were the people who would then pay me for a picture, or they would pay me for a picture first. And then I would say, you look so great tonight. Would you mind if I took a photo of you for my personal collection? And they would say yes.
Fantastic.
So that's how it worked.
That's how it worked.
It would never work today.
No.
It would never work today.
It wouldn't be. So as an example then, there's a beautiful picture of David Bowie looking to the side and looking rather humble. Yeah. So you went up, said, "Hi, David." How did that little, just as an example, did you take a picture and give it to him and then also go, "Oh, can I have another one for my own collection?"
I wish I could remember those details, but it was 45 years ago.
Yes.
44 years ago, to be exact. And I don't remember much about that interaction, except that I asked him and he said yes. And then he just kind of turned his head as if to say, and look at this. He just he said yes. And then he did this. That's all I remember.
And that was it.
I must have given him one. And I usually would give celebrities one.
God.
Just as an appreciation.
Absolutely.
But I don't remember much more about it, truthfully.
Yes. Well, that's incredible. And it's such a nice little thing with your envelope for your photograph by Sharon Smith that you would just put in and give it to them. And then you had a bag that you put the ones that, the sort of duplicates in that you would take home and then keep. So on a night, you said in the interview, you would charge between, $3 to $5. And then sometimes on a good night, you'd make $300, which back then must have been a lot of money in New York as rent was
It
cheap.
was. It was. I remember one New Year's Eve, I made $1,000.
Wowza. That is amazing. That is good. But
But
then,
that wasn't all that, but you have to realize that wasn't all the time. That was, a good night would happen if there was like some really big performer performing and the crowd was big, like, I forgot who asked me this. I think it was in the New York Times interview where, who's that? Guy Trebay. Do you know him?
no.
Guy Trebay? Oh, well, he wrote a book about New York City culture during that time. I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, he asked me how I picked where I would go to work. And the truth is, I picked places that had big crowds because I was working. It was a job. I had to go and make my rent and my expenses. And so I would go to the places with the biggest crowd.
Yes.
And I made deals with those clubs. And, in the beginning, I went like 5 nights a week. But towards the end of all that time, I would just go on Saturday night or Friday and Saturday night. Or if, Valentine's Day fell during the week, I would go to that. Or, because it was, like I said, it was a job.
Yes, absolutely. And that's probably, I think I did an interview with a guy called Terry O'Neill, and he talked about photography, and he just said that the best, he would have these commissions that you'd go and work with someone like Elton John or Frank Sinatra or David Bowie. And the worst thing you could do is to attempt to start some sort of friendship with the subject and sort of hanging out. You just kept that professional distance at all the times, and
Yeah.
you didn't cloud that kind of moment that somehow you were going to be part of their, Sunday afternoon tea and cake routine in
Right.
years to come.
Right.
It was like, I'm here to
Right.
photograph you, get the shots, and I'll be out of your face. And they kind of appreciated it more than someone trying to, sort of get and sit next to them at the table. So I think that's probably makes life a lot easier when you have that professional attitude. I mean, obviously with the Polaroid, and it's kind of unusual. I mean, we're always kind of very familiar with seeing Andy Warhol with his camera. When you met Andy, was he intrigued with your Polaroid camera and what you were doing at that stage?
No.
He just said,
no, he didn't say much.
He didn't say much at all.
No. Well, I don't think he knew what I was doing, really.
That's fair enough. And then, I mean, so you had that kind of amazing 3 to 4 years doing this and probably other bits and pieces. Then what happens then in sort of 83, 84 when, the book, this kind of chapter of your life finishes? What was the reason?
Well, it lasted until 89, truthfully. I mean, the real serious part of the serious part of the project happened from 80 to like 85 or 86.
Yes.
And then I decided that I was getting older. I couldn't go out at night all the time. I just wanted to get some sleep, my values changed, it's like what I was doing in the daytime became more important than what I was doing at night. However, I, from the very beginning, had this vision that I was going to do it for the decade. So I continued to do it, but not as much. I didn't feel like I needed to go out at night so much
to
get what I was looking for because I had so much material already, and the scene had changed a lot. And I think the latest photo in the book is like 1989. I think there's an African-American guy with a kind of conch haircut and a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. You know that picture
Yes,
in the book? Okay. I think that was 89, that photo. And there are a few other ones from 89 there. But from like 87, 88, 89, I was doing it less and just going out on special occasions, New Year's Eve, kind of like dropping into the scene a lot less, but still thinking that I was doing the project. I mean, I had that vision, when I started walking around the Ritz in 1980, it was like, oh my God, this is a cultural moment. I'm here. Amazing things are happening in front of me. I'm going to stick with it.
Yes. But then obviously you were there when you must have started to feel that change with the AIDS virus sweeping through the
Totally.
and that must have been hard on an emotional level, trying to stay positive, seeing people having a good time while thinking this is also a scene that's killing people as well as making them feel happy. But I mean, you must be yes. What was that like for you dealing with that sort of side of?
Well, I lost a lot of friends, good friends died. And it was a very devastating time for the creative arts community in New York City. Because I've said this before, but I think that a lot of the creative expression that is so beautiful that you can see in the photographs, that is so beautiful, is in the face of mortality. It's in the face of death, like this exuberant self-expression. It was a kind of a rough time, and also the political and social context of it was not supportive. It was the Reagan years.
It was we had Thatcher. You had Reagan.
Yeah,
it was quite grim.
So it was, and I think we're moving into something like that now. And my fervent hope is that people will reach into the depths of who they are and express themselves in the face of this horrible repression that is coming down in the United States, particularly.
Yes, I know, but it's it is, and also, I mean, obviously, a lot happened in the 80s. I mean, I'm sure in every decade, obviously, but I mean, for you, for what you were doing with this photographic project, on the music front and culturally, I find that every 3 to 5 years is almost like you were saying when you were 27, you thought, God, I'm too old for this. Now you look back on it.
37. 37.
Oh, 37. 30.
Not 27.
Oh, no,
37.
you moved to New York at 27, didn't you? Right.
That's right. That's right.
But then I realised that, you get a new wave of those 16, 18-year-olds coming along every year, but every 3 to 5 years there's a definite, right, that's the old scene. We want our new, we want the new band, the new artist, the new painter, new whatever.
Yeah.
So you would have seen the 80s change a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it went from this, actually, you might be interested. I did a playlist of 80s music for the book launch. And I'll send it to you. Are you on Spotify?
Yes.
Yeah. So I tried to include all kinds of music in there that was important in the 80s, not I mean, to me, but also to other people. And there's not much British music in there, but maybe there's a little bit. But I tried to include things that I remember hearing.
Yes,
when I was working,
I would imagine.
And so, like, for instance, like you started hearing Michael Jackson in like 83, 80, 82, 83, 84. But 1980, you didn't hear Michael Jackson. You heard the Jackson 5.
Yes.
Right? And that was different.
You would have had the whole...
I mean, there was still the end of the disco era was in there too. Like in the early 80s, they were still playing some disco. I mean, not a lot, but they were still playing some.
Yes, well,
and and then there was Prince. Prince was big.
We had Michael Jackson, Prince, Madonna, and then people like Cyndi Lauper came along as well, and obviously...
Yeah, Cyndi Lauper and the Eurythmics and,
Did Culture Club and Boy George, did he...
Yeah, definitely. Oh, for sure.
Right,
big,
so he
big,
did
big.
Yeah, so there would have been that person.
Like even if you look at some of the pictures of kids from that time, you sort of see this cross-dressing thing that people started to do more regularly then.
Yes.
That was really the beginning of that. People dressing as the opposite sex, just to dress, not even to act out or to say, this is my gender, but it's just this kind of cross-dressing thing. There were what I called at the time, way back then, modern drag queens who wore like contemporary fashion.
Yes.
That was new.
I suppose you would have had Joey Aria, wouldn't you, and Noam Chomsky?
Oh yeah, Joey Aria.
Aria and his little mate, Klaus Nomi. That's it.
Klaus Nomi, yeah.
Yes, well, that would have been a massive one. And there was another artist called Man Parrish who was around that scene, as well as the early years of rap. It would have been, Grandmaster Funk.
Oh yeah, and the hip hop kids. I mean, that was big. That was the start of hip hop. That was the start of break dancing in clubs and clubs that were more. I mean, there were like clubs that were just for this, and clubs that there were gay clubs, there were breakdancing clubs, there were punk clubs, there were this, but there were also places where those things kind of melted together, and that was really interesting.
Yes, I could imagine that would be nice.
Yeah.
So then towards that last bit of the 80s, did you sort of have that? You mentioned that you were going to do it for that period of time, a decade almost. Can you kind of remember that last couple of nights or last couple of sessions you did? Were you conscious at that moment, thinking, "Right, this is it, Sharon. We're going to do it one more time. This is it.
I'm done."
The Ziggy Stardust moment. This is the end.
Yeah, it was like, I wrote a piece one time where I said that toward the end of the 80s, it was like all of a sudden the pair of prescription glasses I had on were the wrong prescription. And like I took them off and it was like, oh, I saw clearly. It's like, I don't need to look at this scene anymore.
Yes, God, that's lovely image. So then how did you your 90s, did you stay in New York or did you have another trip and go?
No. Well, I started traveling around and doing, actually I did two more Polaroid projects, but not in New York. They were small projects, but I photographed the 25th anniversary of the Cuban Revolution in 1984 in Polaroid.
Yeah.
And then I also did a very small project in Polaroid in Haiti in 1990. But in about 87, I started just doing like straight, 35 millimeter photography. And I was traveling around a lot. I was shooting for a stock photo house called Photonica, which was based in Japan. It was kind of a boutique little place. And I didn't really have a big focus until 1990. I did a 4-year project. I wasn't there all the time, but I went every year for 4 years for a concentrated amount of time, like a month to 6 weeks, to Russia. It was the disintegration of the Soviet Union, and I went there in 1990. So this is another part of my life. I'm an astrologer. And I went to an astrology conference in Moscow in 1990. And it was the first astrology conference that they had had since the end of the revolution, where they had had a conference and they had loaded all the astrologers into a bus and taken them to Siberia. Basically, they just got rid of them.
Well,
but the wall fell in 89. And, the Russian people have had at that time, I don't know what it's like now, but at that time, there was this real yearning for spiritual understanding and esoteric knowledge. He talked about Carlos Castaneda. Like, yes. I met people there who told me these amazing stories of how, like during the worst years of Soviet Russia, somebody would get a copy of a Carlos Castaneda book and photograph it with a camera and give the film to somebody who worked in a darkroom who would clandestinely print the pages of the book and bind it together. There would be one copy and they would read it like there was a truck that would come around. I forget. My memory isn't so good, but it was a guy. It was like somebody's fish truck.
Yes.
I don't know who it was. Some person's name. And they knew if they saw that truck come by that you could go and meet at a certain place and you would sit there and you would read, people would read the Carlos Castaneda book out loud. Right.
Wow.
So anyway, there was an astrology conference in 1990 and I decided, I was in Berlin at the time, and I had been photographing these punk clubs in black and white in the former East Berlin. And I was visiting a friend of mine who is a novelist. He wasn't a novelist. He was writing a memoir. He was there. And I decided, okay, I'm so close. I'm going to go over to Moscow. So I went to this thing, and I met some people and I took incredible pictures and I thought, oh, I'm going to come back here. And so they invited me to come back and I went 4 times and I spent a long time, concentrated amount of time in Moscow and in St. Petersburg, formerly Leningrad. And that project was called Interrupted Lives. And that was an exhibition of this kind of moment that was like a breakdown. They were no longer Soviets and they hadn't like gone to the dark side with Putin or the capitalist thing. There was like this really weird like moment.
Yes, God.
So yeah, so I did that, and I continued my studies of Tai Chi and Qigong. And after 9/11, I just thought, this is how I can help people. So I stopped really trying to do commercial photography, and I just kind of went into this other world. And that's what I do now.
Right.
And
did you also do things like
all,
Reiki? Did you also do Reiki or anything else, or was it?
No, I don't do Reiki, but I do a kind of hands-on body work, which is called Chinate Song, which is a Thai form of massage on your abdomen. It's for your digestion and
right,
that kind of thing.
Yes, I mean, I suppose were you working on acupuncture points and
yeah,
those
I work with that. I work with that system.
The base, yes, sorting out your base chakra. It's always important, isn't it, in life? Did you? I mean, so then, I know it's always good to get things flowing. And open your third eye. Did you? So then you managed to get. Did you have all these kind of photos that you've got? And I have to say, the ones in the 90s sound absolutely fascinating. Did you just have them nicely filed and just thought, well, I'm not sure what to do with them?
Well, I tell you something, David. I always wanted to make a book of those pictures. I always wanted to. And at various times in the past 40-something years, I have put together various small little book dummies and peddled it around, and nobody was interested, really. And so they were in boxes in a closet. And fortunately, I knew that I should keep them in the dark because they're in pretty good shape.
Yes.
They're not cracked. They're, I mean, you can tell from the book. I mean, they look beautiful. But the originals are quite beautiful. They're little artifacts. And I knew to keep them in darkness. And so they were in a closet for all this time in boxes. And I had like a select box and a seconds box. And then I had a bunch of other ones that were just kind of here and there. And so I got kind of disillusioned with the idea of making a book like in the early 2000s. And I just forgot about it. And then a couple of years ago, a woman I know, a lovely, talented, smart woman named Caitlin Dover, she saw them and she said, Sharon, you have to do something with these pictures. You have to make a book.
Yes.
And she would, she's younger. That's the other thing. I needed to meet some younger people who saw because the people my age were like, oh, yeah, these are Polaroids. What's the big deal? So Katie, she kind of lit a fire under me, and she helped me put together a new way of presenting the book, which we presented to an agent who didn't really do anything. And then one day I was listening to a podcast with Bill Shapiro. I think it's called the United Nations of Photography. Do you know it?
No, but I've come across Bill. Yes.
It's with some guy from England. I don't know what his name is, but anyway, they were talking about what made a good photography book and how a lot of photographers think they have a book project, but really there's no reason to publish the book. And they're talking about like what makes a good book. And I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, he's talking about my book. I was like, really? Like, wow, I think he might like my book project. So I just wrote him an email. It was just totally cold. And I sent him this little thing that we had put together for the agent. And he liked it. Not only he liked it, he loved it. And so then we started working together, and he's the editor of the book, and he worked on the original sequencing, and I, added a few things, and it's been a process, but we finally connected with Idea Books, and they were fantastic to work with. Just wonderful to work with in every way. And, we tweaked it a little bit more, and we had a book.
Wow, you must have been so happy and sort of
Thrilled.
Yes, that must have felt
I can't tell you.
You must have felt like quite a lot of, I don't know, frustration that could just be let go and let it just happen, and it must have felt really nice.
Well, it was very gratifying. That's the word that I use.
Yes.
It was just gratifying to see this work come together, to have people appreciate it, and just to feel like I put that baby to bed. It's done. Now I can work on other ones.
Yes, this is also true. I know. Well, it's interesting. So when it came out, have you sort of, what's the reception been like? Because obviously this is quite an amazing snapshot of the kind of the 80s, especially that early part of the 80s, because it's 80 to 85 with a few extras. But that, have you had much kind of response from people who were there or curious or interested or?
Oh, are you kidding? It's been incredible. I mean, the press, the press that chose to cover it, the Guardian, the New York Times, Harper's, there's something coming out in the Italian newspaper, La Repubblica. There are little blogs here and there. I've been blown away. Seriously blown away. And fashion magazines, and Dazed. It's incredible. Like the post that Dazed made on Instagram, I don't know, maybe you saw it.
Yes.
Had 32,000 likes. And people look at the pictures, and there are a few people who think they're terrible pictures, and I just ignore them because really, if pictures get 30,000 likes, and like 10 people think they're terrible, it's like, well, it hurt my feelings a little bit, but really, I can't take it seriously.
No. Well,
and so it's been incredible, and I have to tell you one story, which I think you would appreciate, and that is the day before the book launch, I went to have my hair blown out, and I didn't know this person who did it at the salon. Somebody said, "Oh, go see this person." So I went to see this person, and she was great. We're talking, and I was telling her, and I wanted her to put these colors in my hair, these pink and blue and purple colors. And she said, "Oh, is it a special occasion?" I said, "Yeah. I'm having a book launch tomorrow, and I'm so excited. I wanted to do something special, like sort of put me in that space again of the 1980s. I told her what it was about. She said, "Oh, my goodness. Do you know this guy, Ronnie Jackson?" And I was like, "No, that's a really familiar name." And then she shows me a picture of him now. And I say to her, "Oh, my God. He's in my book." So she contacted him. I'm going to show you the picture of him.
My God.
She contacted him, and he came to the launch. It was just so cool. That was so cool. And there were a few other people who came to the launch who were like, there was the DJ from the Ritz who came. That was very cool. There was a guy who worked at this this clothing store that I guess I used to go to. He remembered me. And okay, here he is.
Let's have a look.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. That's amazing.
You see?
Oh, my God.
You see?
Yes,
So
I
he's the
can.
guy in the leopard hat in the book. This
Yes,
guy. Can
Ronnie.
you believe that?
That's amazing. And you got a lovely little write-up as well from DJ Honey
Oh,
Dijon.
Honey Dijon. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
That's so, I mean, that must be nice in a, not a healing way, but in making those connections and sort of making sense of life sometimes. Having books like this
yeah.
come out to sort of look at 45 years of a journey that you've been on.
Uh-huh.
That must
Yep,
have been, it must have been amazing. So,
it was.
and so with your other, I mean, this is amazing publication, but you obviously got quite a few other stocks of photographs. Do you have plans to look at those as kind of potential publications as well?
I do, but not right now. I need a break from this. But yeah, I do.
Well, absolutely.
I mean, I
That's,
don't know. I don't know what it's going to be like, really, but I have some ideas cooking
yes.
in my mind. Yeah.
And just briefly then, you do Tai Chi and various other bits of and body work. Do you still take photographs or are you interested
Oh,
in?
all the time, but just with my phone.
Yes.
You know, I stopped using traditional cameras, I think in 2016,
Yeah, I know. I think we all did, didn't we?
because, yeah, well, I just got tired of carrying stuff, traipsing around and carrying things. And I went to the Galapagos Islands. And I mean, in the past, I would have, like, you know, tried to be a wildlife photographer. I mean, I did. I've photographed I have a lot of great animal pictures, actually. I've been on safari. I've been to Costa Rica. I've been to Galapagos. I have beautiful animal pictures. But before I went to the Galapagos, I just decided, you know what? I don't care. I'm just going to photograph with my phone, and to hell with it. I'm done. I
Yeah.
just didn't want to carry stuff around with me.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, that's yes. I think walking lightly in the world is a good lesson. So, look, if you could have whispered then something to your 16-year-old self starting out on this interesting journey, is there anything in particular that you would have thought, oh yes, that would have been a good thing to have focused on or to have gone in this direction? I know sometimes you think, well, it was all fine, but is there any particular thing you might have just whispered to that person? Just to say, oh yes,
When I started doing the Polaroid
yes,
project.
well, yeah, well, just when you were 16 and you were starting out
When I
in
was
this.
16.
When you were 16, is there anything that you would have told that little person as they sat or stood there?
Uh-huh.
You would have said, "Oh yeah, I'll give you a few little words of wisdom."
Just follow your intuition. Trust your likes and your dislikes. Trust them. And when you pursue your creativity, be kind. Be kind to people.
Yes,
I would say that.
yes, that's kindness is so important. Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
But and on that cliffhanger, we're going to call it a day. There's just a little bit of chat about saying goodbye, but apart from that, a massive thank you to Sharon for giving me the time for that interview. This has been the C86 show, David Eastaugh. If you want to contact me, you can probably find me, locate me on all the social media platform sites, just about. Just do C86 show, my name. All these interviews have been archived on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. It's true. Have a great week. Stay safe.